We got one on the far side.
Yeah. Are we in?
We're live now.
Okay, YouTube is broadcasting, and we'll
Are
just
we
give
waiting for Mike?
CCTV a second. We'll go when you're ready, Mike.
Did read the DVD for some reason, so rerunning it.
All right, thank you. Good evening. This is the Guilford Board of Education. It is Monday, June 14th. Welcome to our meeting. First order is business is to do the pledge of allegiance. So I invite you to join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Again, this is the Guilford Board of Education. You will notice that almost everyone is wearing masks. I'm the exception at the moment because I'm speaking, and so one of the things we are going to do is, as board members are speaking, they are welcome to remove the mask so that other people can hear, but otherwise we are abiding by the requirements of being within the school and keeping masks on. It looks like there's a number of the public here. Welcome. Wonderful to see people in person. I'll note that there are 2 points in the agenda for public comment if people are interested in providing that. The first is early on agenda when we offer space for folks to offer public comment on topics on the board agenda. And then towards the end of the meeting, there is a place for public questions or public comment. So we certainly welcome any of you who would like to come forward and do that. We'll ask that if you are interested at either of those times, again, the first time for agenda topics, the second time for any topic you wish, that you come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. So the first order of business tonight is the approval of the May 10 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
Second.
Excellent. Any comments or corrections on these minutes? I had 2 suggested edits. One is on page 1, under number 5. First paragraph, the 3rd line. Tuition is $330,000 under budget due to, I was going to suggest lower than projected services, because I think it's confusing in a confusing manner otherwise. And then on page 2, under 7.1, the last sentence of that first paragraph about one of our students who received the Kid Leadership Award, advised that she decided there's a number 10 in there, which I think should be the word to. Any other questions or edits? All right. So there's been a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting the corrected minutes?
Aye.
Aye. That's everyone. Thank you. Second item on the agenda is the May 24th workshop meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve these minutes? Second. Any questions, corrections? No? All in favor? Aye. Okay, that's everybody. Terrific. So now there's an opportunity for anyone in the public who would like to address us on topics on the board agenda this evening. We'll have an end of the year school update, ESER 3 planning. No, all right. Communications.
No, expenditures.
I'm sorry?
Expenditures.
Oh, you mean that really important number 4 there? John, thank you. I'm so excited to be in person in meetings. I'm just, sorry. Number 5, review and approval of expenditures for the month of May. Mr. Galino was going to share those with us.
Thank you, Dr. Minister. So, as all my colleagues and everyone has done, the memo came coming from Tribune regarding the financials for the month of May 2021. Expenditures for the month of May were $5,781,061. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of May were 86.11% of the budget as compared to 82.48% the prior year. Revenue for May 2021 was $331,223.75, which does include the $327,971 from the excess cost grant and the $4,252 line for Medicaid. Now, that's about 80.3% higher than expected due to the final payment of our excess cost grant being reimbursed. Employee benefits, the budget was a little higher than prior year. The medical line is higher than the prior year due to the June payment included in the May expenses report. And COVID, our application for the ESSER 2 grant was approved, and a request has been submitted for reimbursement of the applicable salary expenses. We did go over this in the prior meeting this evening, and we had some questions, but feel free to ask any other questions you guys have on any other line item that you may need more clarification on.
Thank you, Mr. Galino. So as we just mentioned, we did talk about this in detail in the operations committee meeting, which happened just prior to this meeting. As Mr. Galino noted, the excess cost grant this year represented 80.3% of the reimbursement, which is significantly higher than we've seen in the last couple of years. The last couple of years, it has generally been in the low 70s, so that was particularly beneficial. The other really important news that came out of the operations committee meeting and the discussion of financial reports is that we, Mrs. Trudeau and our business department has been very, very carefully tracking our COVID expenses over the year, as well as the grants that are coming in, watching other budget lines. We thought 2 months ago that we were going to have to go back to the Board of Finance for a special appropriation. We were excited at that time that it was looked like it was going to be perhaps around $300,000. Last month, it looked like it was going to be half of that. And at the moment, it looks like we, in fact, will not have to ask for a special appropriation. So I mentioned it in the last meeting, and I do want to mention here that to Mrs. Trudeau's great credit and her staff, we are looking like at this point that we are going to come in to the end of this year under budget at a time when we spent a fair amount of money on COVID expenses. And so I just want to say kudos to her and to her staff. Yes. I do want to give any other of my colleagues a moment to comment or ask questions about the expenses if they have them. Although again, we covered this in the last meeting. Okay, so Mr. Galino, then is that a motion to approve the finances for
I'd like to
May?
present a motion to approve the finances for May 2021. Please.
Wonderful. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that is all of us. Thank you so much. All right, we are now at communications. I will note that we have gotten a number of communications over the last month. Many of them in relation to the Equity and Social Justice Initiative in the Board of Ed statement. I will note, I spent some time this afternoon that we've heard from over 50 people telling us or communicating their support to us about this initiative and strongly supporting it. We have had a couple of people who have raised concerns reaching out to us, and also folks who've had a couple of questions about what we're doing. And we are more than happy to answer any questions that people have. I will also note that the Guilford Fund for Education here in town The Board of Directors of the GFFE wrote the Board of Education a letter in support of this work, as did the Executive Director of Learn, and as did the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, reached out to us as well. So again, a number of communications on that topic. Are there other communications that Board of Ed members received that we want to make sure we note? All right, again, I will note there were a couple of questions. I have already checked in with Dr. Freeman to get those answers, so I will get responses to those people tomorrow. All right, student representatives, Jerry, it's wonderful to see you. I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, so first at Guilford High School, as things are wrapping up, we would first like to congrat all the Guilford spring sports teams on their fantastic seasons. And we'd like to give a special congratulations to the girls lacrosse team who won their state championship on Saturday. And also AP tests are concluding and have concluded. Juniors have also taken their NGSS science test, which is still in the developmental phase. And the last day of school for students is on Wednesday, and graduation is this Thursday. Next, at Baldwin Middle School, a COVID-modified version of the Baldwin Bonanza was held on the 7th and 8th. And this was a 6th grade only event with fun outdoor activities held right on the grounds of Baldwin Middle School. The physical education department organized the day's events in partnership with classroom teachers and the support of the PTO. The PTO generously supplied each 6th grade student with metal water bottles that read "Goodbye Baldwin, Hello Adams," and it included both of the school's mascots. We hope that the day provided 6th graders with the opportunity to make happy memories. Today is also Flag Day, and Baldwin recognizes that as part of their morning activities. So each year they invite students to create a Baldwin Middle School flag that represents the school community. One flag design is chosen to represent the school and to be displayed with past winning designs on the wall of flags in the cafeteria. This year there were 50 designs entered, which is the most ever. And this year's winning design was created by 6th grader Jade Logan Bond. Congratulations. Stepping Up Day is the day that 6th grade students are recognized as they prepare to step up to Adams Middle School as 7th graders. This year, we wanted to provide a ceremony that resembled those held prior to COVID. So Baldwin worked with the town's health director, Sonia Marino, to put together COVID-safe indoor ceremonies that will take place in the Baldwin Gymnasium on Wednesday the 16th and Thursday the 17th. While capacity is limited, Baldwin has received overwhelming support and participation from students and families. The entire Baldwin Middle School community wishes everyone a wonderful summer. At Melissa Jones School, 4 Jones teachers were awarded GFFE grants this year, including Miss Bernard, Miss Criscio, Miss Shields, and Miss Sturdivant. Miss Criccio's flamenco in the classroom was even recently awarded the Superintendent's Award for the innovative way it engaged students. Students have enjoyed many guest speakers via Zoom to support their units of study. These speakers included Miss Siley, a biology and geophysics teacher at Guilford High, who spoke about biomimicry. Another speaker was NBC First Alert meteorologist Caitlin McGrath, shared information about different types of weather, what causes certain kinds of storms, and the tools and technology that meteorologists use to learn more about and predict weather. A paleontologist from the Yale Peabody Museum also came, who showed many different types of fossils, such as oyster, bone, wood, and dinosaur fossils. Melissa Jones also held their field day on Thursday and had lots of fun outside. Finally, at Calvin Leet had an amazing field day on June 11th. Mr. Ted Irvin worked hard and collaborated with the teachers and his colleagues on how best to create a memorable day for all the students. And you could hear the lingering satisfaction from students as they made comments saying, "This is the best day ever. Today was amazing, and I had so much fun." On a different note, this year Leet has a number of retirements within their Leet family. We wish to wish all retirees all the very best as they embark on the new chapters of their lives. Mrs. Dem Golembieski, the physical education teacher, Mrs. Deb Clifford, the special education teacher, Mrs. Judy Ward, the EL tutor, Miss Allison Becker, the cafeteria manager, and Mrs. Barbara Caitlin, the administrative assistant. Congratulations and best wishes. And finally, fourth grade students will have their stepping up ceremony on June 16th. Lead students and staff are ending the academic year on a strong, positive, and inspired note. Thanks.
Thank you, Jerry.
Wonderful.
Jerry.
That was a very, very long list of things. Thank you for all of your reports throughout the year, and certainly tonight, and we wish you a wonderful summer.
Thank you, you too.
Did anyone have questions for any candidate?
Good to see you in person.
Yeah, so have you too.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. Once again, you're welcome to stay. But as you know, I say every time, you're also welcome to places you'd like to be. All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I will note that another one of our representatives, Tanya Beauvais, could not be here tonight. But we do have a recognition for her that we will make sure that we get to her.
Yeah, Jerry will be coming back to us next year.
Yes, I should make that clear. That's exactly right.
Julie will be stepping off the board and we will be sharing this recognition and thanks of all of her work with us.
That's right. So we will, unfortunately, she couldn't be with us, but we will make sure this gets to her. Certificate of recognition, Julia Christine Lugo, I hope I pronounced her name correctly, is recognized with special thanks and appreciation for her participation as a student representative on the Guilford Board of Education. So we will make sure that this gets to her. Terrific. All right. We have come to the superintendent's report. So Dr. Dillon, would you read it?
Thank you, Dr. Collins Tracy. So Jerry touched on one of many of the items within my first item. As we do as we enter this last week of school, we are beginning to come back to normal and we are entering into a series of end of the year activities. Again, those activities are sort of scaled to normal. Jerry mentioned that there will be some fourth grade stepping up activities that are still fairly COVID restricted. Our youngest students have not had the opportunity to be vaccinated at this time. And when we began planning these, we weren't exactly sure where we were going to be. Jerry mentioned some of the activities that are taking place at schools like field days, and those field days are still happening within cohorts. We are still maintaining many of those modifications, even though we're beginning to come back to normal. As we move into Baldwin and Adams and their stepping up ceremonies, their promotion ceremonies, we're releasing a little bit more. Adams, I believe, will be relocating here to the high school on Wednesday, originally scheduled for Tuesday, but the weather does not look promising, so we're taking advantage of a rain date. Most exciting is the high school graduation. The high school graduation will be the event that is returning most to normal this year, recognizing that many of our high school students have taken advantage of and are now fully vaccinated, and recognizing that those students won't have other opportunities to make up that missed event. And so we are really excited that high school graduation will be taking place on the Guilford Green this Thursday, the 17th. Students will be maintaining one piece of last year's event, which was the car processional from the high school to the parking lot at St. George's, and then they will be sort of repeating the traditional processional walking from the parking lot at St. George's onto the green. We do need to remind community members that you are welcomed and encouraged to line up along that route and to watch the students as they process to the green. And I do need to remind our students and families who participate in the processional that you need to be fully within your automobile as you participate in that procession. You may not be in the back of the pickup truck or are hanging out a window. Guilford Police are firm on this. So please, we want this to be a really positive experience for all. On the green, we have reduced some of the assigned seating, particularly for dignitaries, in order to provide as much open space on the green as we can for parents. We are really excited that we are not limiting attendance for graduating students and their families. So again, we want to encourage the community to be part of the processional, to be present on the green, but to really allow those prime upfront spaces for the families of our graduates. And the graduates will be sitting together in assigned seats as a graduating class. We will be working on keeping the event positive and uplifting and as important and traditional as it's always been, but also working to reduce the time spent there. And in that effort, Dr. Bellis, Tracy, and I will both be foregoing our extended 10 to 15 minutes of comments and extended metaphor to make sure that we are reducing the event time and focusing on the students as we should be this year. So again, it's our last week of school. We're coming back to normal. We will be maintaining the mask mandates through these last 3 days of school as directed by the State Department of Education and the Department of Public Health. But really exciting to be finishing what's close to normal and already beginning to look forward to bringing students back for next year.
And I don't think I really mentioned this tonight, but forgive me if you did. There is a rain date, although the weather does not look like we will need it for Friday the 18th because we cannot bring.
Yes, thank you.
everybody inside.
A really important point. Graduation usually had an open graduation scheduled on the green and a fallback position to the gymnasium here at the high school with limited tickets for family members. We do not have that indoor option this year. We have a rain date of Friday if necessary, but you're right, it looks like we should be okay.
Any questions?
Are there after graduation activities for the students?
Yes, there is a project graduation event that is being organized and that is being supervised by volunteers, yes. And we appreciate their efforts this year of all years to be able to provide that safe and supervised activity.
And then you have another item here.
Yep, I want to give an update on the ESSER 3 application. We were going to project, but we ran into difficulties with projection. I'm going to hand out, I'm going to send these handouts around for board members. They're not stapled, so each of you needs to take 2 pages. It's a 3-page document, front and back on 2 pieces of paper. So take 2 off the top and then pass it to your right. We will be okay. So earlier tonight, in the financial update, it's really important to note that as we entered this school year, we had the support of the Board of Education and the Board of Finance to do what was necessary to make schools safe. In the first 2 months of this school year, we were trending about $2 million over budget. We had spent on PPE, we had spent on plexiglass, we had added staffing in a number of areas, including some classroom positions, to make sure that we could provide a safe and healthy school year this year. Over the course of the year, there were some costs that were avoided in our food budget because of the unusualness of the year. We had reduced transportation costs, we had reduced field trips and outside activities, but importantly, we also had the opportunity to draw down federal supports. And so over the course of the year, we received money first from the CARES Act, and then from the ESSER grant, and then from the ESSER 2 grant. And it was all of those funds together, as well as the management in district and the work of principals and department heads to keep costs down, that will allow us to finish this year on budget. We are now working on our application for the ESSER 3 grant. The ESSER 3 grant is in fact the single largest grant that we will be receiving to date. And this grant is forward-looking. It is not backward-looking at how we got through this year. We will close this year on budget. Next year, as we come back, Guilford is receiving in ESSER 3 funds approximately $1.1 million. This is a little bit less than 2% of our annual budget, and we will have 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years over which to expend those funds. First thing that I want to do is I want to acknowledge how grateful we are of those dollars, but I also want to put them in context. There are other Connecticut school districts that are receiving $120 million. There are other Connecticut school districts that will be receiving northward of 40% of one annual budget that they will have additionally to expend over the next 3 years. The monies are being released based on formulas for need and ability to pay in the communities in which the schools are situated. So $1.1 million is a significant amount of money that we can use to help our students come out of this pandemic year and begin next year strong. But $1.1 million spread over 3 years doesn't actually go as far as some people might think. And so I want to make that clear. What we've done tonight, and this is different than the CARES Act or the ESSER grant or the ESSER 2 grant. Earlier this evening, we released a thought exchange prompt to all of the parents of students in our school community. Thought exchange is a tool, it's a software tool that allows us to generate community input. It is more like Yelp than it is like SurveyMonkey. So what we did earlier tonight was we released a draft of the plan that I've just passed out to all of you board members. It will be on our website, but it also went by email direct to every parent in our community earlier this evening. The thought exchange will allow parents to look at that draft plan and comment on it, and then see comments from other parents and comment back on those comments as well. And so it will generate for us feedback on the plan, and hopefully it will help us to revise this plan before we need to submit our final application, which will be due later this summer. So in really broad terms, what I want to do is I want to set the stage for the board. Of the $1.1 million, we broke it into 3 broad categories. The first category is direct student support. So in that category, we have some staffing positions. This is important to note. These monies sunset in 2.5 years. So these staffing positions either have to be recognized as transitional. They are here to help our students transition from the pandemic back to regular schooling, and these positions go away when the funding dries up in 2 years. Or we will have to, as a board, consider whether these positions need to be built into our local taxpayer-supported operational budget. But these are not permanent positions as presented at this time. One is to add a full-time certified English language teacher. Our students who are learning English as a second language while going through this pandemic in many ways have been impacted the most. Their schooling wasn't just about reading and math and science and social studies in their specials, but they've also been trying to master a new language at the same time. To date, Guilford has employed English language tutors. We have not in this district previously hired fully certified English language teachers. This budget proposes the hire of a fully certified English as a second language teacher, who will then be working in the program and supporting those specific students. The board knows that in the operational budget, we added 1 additional social work or psychologist position to target the high school level. These funds are going to allow us to add 2 additional mental health positions, 1 to target the middle level and 1 to target the elementary level. As we went through the budget process, there were questions about why just 1, and we were anticipating that these monies might allow us to expand that. So there will be additional mental health positions, again, 1 at the elementary, 1 at the middle, 1 at the high. Of those 3, 1 will be permanent and the other 2 will be transitional as we come back through this pandemic. Additionally, we are adding additional paraprofessional supports. We are adding a lump sum of dollars that will be available for individualized student supports. These would be supports that would be identified through teams at the school. And if there are individual students who have been specifically impacted or more severely impacted, these would be monies that would be able to help those students to focus on specific areas. And it would be through the SRBI process, or the scientifically research-based intervention process and team that exists currently at all of our schools. And additionally and importantly, and we talked about this at the board level before, we will also be adding simply additional contact time, more time for students to be able to engage in really rich learning activities that are both grade level appropriate and aligned with grade level standards. The first of which will occur over this summer, and then the second of which will occur after hours. One of the things that we've learned through this pandemic is that we can use Zoom to extend the school day for some students who want or need that opportunity. These will not be specifically targeted remedial programs. This is not deficit-based, a deficit-based approach. This is the idea of more contact time. So if your students didn't get the same amount of touch that they needed this school year, they have an opportunity over the summer to have more instructional minutes, and the same would be made available over the school year and after hours opportunities. We offered a similar summer enrichment program last year. The interest this year from parents, students were either brought forward by their parents for this additional activity, or they were recommended by school staff to be part of this additional activity. The interest this year is about 3 times what it was last year, and last year was significantly higher than the year before. So we know that there's an interest in that additional time. We are really excited that this summer program partners with Guilford Park and Rec. It is not an all-day rigorous summer school. It's a few hours of academic-based activities, which, by the way, are project-based themselves, and so fun and engaging and rich. And then those students have the opportunity to either go home or stay on and be part of the Park and Rec opportunity that Guilford Park and Rec is offering, so that there is a social and a physical and an outside component as well as the academic component. When you look at those direct student supports or the spending that we identify as direct student supports, that represents about $700,000 of the 1.1 million that we're gaining. And again, it's spread over 2 to 2.5 to 3 years of spending. The next section is identified as staff training and learning. It's a much longer section, but it has much smaller dollar amounts. And at the bottom, what we are also offering is we are offering opportunities for teacher learning and training to come out of this pandemic. There's a number of opportunities. I'm not going to hit each one of these individually, but we are looking at credentialing opportunities for teachers to gain further professional learning and in fact earn themselves additional credentials or micro-credentials in areas like Wharton Gillingham reading instruction or math instruction. There are opportunities for professional learning that we found to be incredibly helpful this year that we want to continue to build on. So working with staff members through the school year about trauma-informed instruction, working around culturally responsive and sustaining pedagogy, and working around issues of gender identification, sensitivity, and training and support opportunities for staff around those areas. Those are areas that will extend across the school year. There will be a summer academy that we offer this summer for teachers. Teachers will have the opportunity to come to a 3 or 4 day academy and do deep learning in special areas. These areas, they span from phonics fundamental instruction. We began offering new phonics materials this year. And so for the teachers who were bringing in new materials and new instructional approaches this year and want more time to work on that this summer, that time is being made available. There's going to be an academy on mindfulness. There's going to be an academy that falls into a number of different areas. These are individualized and interest-based. This won't hit the whole staff, but this will spread that increased expertise throughout the district as we engage. There will be a summer academy, and again, similar with the student design, there will be additional after-hours opportunities for teachers to continue to identify other areas and continue to dig into those areas. I glossed right over technology. There's a couple of academies that are going to continue to focus on the technology learning. We're also particularly excited about the fact that Guilford was one of only 6 districts that were invited to participate with the Connecticut Center for School Change in a professional networked improvement community around the instructional approach of accelerating out of this pandemic rather than remediating our way out of this pandemic. So we will be working, there are 9 of us who include building level administrators, coaches, as well as some of the central office administrators who will be working intimately with that network improvement community. And together, these 6 districts will be looking at plans like these. What are we doing in September and October as we're coming out of this pandemic? What are we learning from those experiences? How can we learn from the experiences of the other 5 districts? And one of the nice things about this grant, it's amendable. So despite the fact that we've got some really sort of bright line deadlines we need to meet, the spending plan is amendable over these 3 years. So this network improvement community will allow us to learn from our experience, learn from others' experience, and then modify these approaches as we come out of this pandemic. And then again, all of that teacher-focused spending comes in at around $300,000 to help the teachers with what they will need to be able to help lead the students out of this school year. And then there's a final small section that catches some software and equipment costs. We want to expand the size of the cafeteria here next year. That's going to be a continued need. We have the tent, but we need some additional outdoor furniture to make that space more usable next year. We're going to continue to lean on Zoom, some of them for the spending that I mentioned in this plan. The thought exchange program that I just mentioned is going to help us to really reach out and not just send information out to the community, but to ask the community to respond. And so we see a real opportunity to continue to use thought exchange, not just around grant applications like this one, but around ideas for continued adult training. When we find ourselves needing to make principal or administrative hires, that we will be able to really reach out and hear back from the community. Thought exchange is just an exciting tool. And then some other pieces that teachers experienced this year that they want to be able to hold on to. And that entire spend, this, the category that we could call stuff, comes in at about $125,000. So again, I've been meeting with small groups of people to talk about the plan, sharing it here with you in greater detail than we've discussed in the past. It will be available on our website for folks to comment on in a traditional way. And we're looking forward to seeing this thought exchange report that we will get. The thought exchange question will be open from this afternoon when it was sent through the close of business Friday. And we'll have a report sitting in our office on Monday that helps to pull together the community's responses to the ways in which we're thinking of spending these dollars right now. Again, I hate to finish this way, but when we first thought about engaging the community in this conversation, which by the way is a grant requirement, it's not just that we want to do it, we do want to do it, but it's also a requirement of spending the grant. I was really worried that if we simply went out to the community and said, how should we spend $1 million? We're going to get a list that's $10 million long. But the idea of, again, pointing out it's a little less than 2% of one budget that will be here to help us transition out. We want to prioritize the direct student supports, but we also know that teacher learning is going to be enormously important. And now to hear back on the plan as drafted, we've got a few weeks yet before the final application is due to modify this list or the ratios where the monies fall within the list based on that feedback. And again, really important, the grant is amendable. So we will be able to continue to learn and move monies through these 3 years if we find that we're learning important lessons as we do spend the dollars. A lot of talking for $1 million. $1 million doesn't buy what it used to, but I did want to make sure that I covered that with everybody.
Questions? Go ahead.
So on our approximate cost category, this is the approximate cost spread over the 2 to 3 years. This isn't just next year's.
Yes, in
approximate
many
cost.
places, you're looking at 2 years worth of expenses. And
Okay.
so the quick place to go would be to those 2.0 social workers. It's the second line. A $200,000 cost is anticipating 2 social workers at entry-level salary of $50,000 a year for 2 years. And again, we are thinking that even though we have 3 years to spend the monies, 2 years for those positions will give us time to determine, are we coming out? Did they help us with the transition as we visioned? And are we ready to sunset those positions? Or alternately, do we need to start thinking about building them into our base operational budget? And in that case, I would rather not wait until the 3rd and final year, because if necessary, we could again move dollars if we needed to while we worked on a local budget to maybe stretch those for an additional year.
Okay.
So some of these items, most are based on a 2-year calendar.
Okay.
And these costs, thank you for noting that, these are approximate. When we submit to the state, we will need to have an application that's accurate down to the dollar, but that wasn't necessary to get people to comment and to hear folks' feedback. So these numbers are rounded off and they're just approximates at this time.
My concern becomes hiring talent, knowing that it could only be a 2 to 2.5 year gig. And how do we plan on doing that is the question. Because, in all honesty, as we're looking at the budget year in, year out, and we're making staffing cuts, these would presumably be some of the first positions to cut should we need to.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. Thank you. 2 responses. One is the first thing we need to do is be really honest and transparent. So as we are interviewing for these positions, advertising, we will make clear that these are grant funded positions and we do not anticipate that they will be permanent. We need to be honest and candid and fair to the folks who are looking at them. But then what often happens is that even though these are coming in as grant funded positions, if there are retirements within the seniority list of that department ahead of these people, it may not actually be the grant funded, right? These folks get 2 years of seniority. If there's a significant amount of retirement above them, then they might, and so honestly, with our eyes open, it's a danger. When we first started looking at this, I was originally opposed to having any staffing positions because it creates a funding cliff. Districts all over the country ran into this in 2008 and 9 when the relief monies came out after the financial collapse. A lot of districts built their response on staffing, and then you end up hitting that cliff. The money goes away, and now you're ended up making a forced choice. So it's there, it's highlighted at the top of the list. It's just that we really believe, especially those first 3 teaching positions are so important. We need to do this. It's the right way to spend the dollars, and we need to just do it with our eyes open. And I will be bringing it up during budget deliberations next year and the year after. We won't just set it aside and forget it until the dollars sunset and now we're rushing to make a decision. It might be really prudent if the board chooses to add 1 additional position. And again, the grant being amendable, if we added 1 social worker position to the base budget next year, we could pull some of those dollars out of year 2 of the grant, spend it in other places where we're seeing we're having a big impact, and that softens the landing at the cliff. And so, again, I'll be bringing this up as part of budget deliberations next year. Thank you for the question.
The staff positions and being funded by grant money, they're going to be benefit positions, right? So we have to consider.
They're full members of the bargaining unit, yes. And so, right.
That wouldn't be in this.
No, we're budgeting just for the salary cost here. There are benefit costs associated. We heard a report earlier in operations about what our medical line sits at. So we are treating these the same way we treat others. We generally do the benefits a year back because you never know if the benefit package is going to be an individual or a family of 6. And so the benefit budgeting is always done with that 1-year look back, so it wouldn't be included here.
You need to clarify this under transgender sensitivity training. Something, you only call out items and costs, already touched on.
We did this training here at the high school this year, and it was really well received and very successful. We want to push down from the high school into Adams, but we also recognized that we wanted to begin at an elementary level. And so I think what you're going to continue to see here is that next year we will probably push from Adams down into Baldwin and select another 2 elementaries so that we're sort of coming from both ends. But we also didn't want to necessarily try to do all of that at once. The other piece is that we really like Tony, and we want to be able to do it at a pace where Tony can do the work with us and for us. And so rather than trying to do everybody, we're going to start coming at it from both ends. And we may have the opportunity to have 1 or 2 staff members from other buildings drop in. Yes, it doesn't have to be exclusively Adams. We can certainly have some of the school counselor staff or some other key staff from elementaries or Baldwin join in on those trainings, even though they're centered on those full staffs in those 2 buildings.
And this goes without saying, I'm sure, but Tony is certainly going to consider the developmental level of those two
Yes.
school districts.
Yes, in fact, I believe Tony has done some work with 1 or more of the preschools in town in Guilford and done really well there. So yes, it is not a high school package presentation that is going to be brought to Cox. It is going to be focused on students elementary aged and how those teachers will support those children. Absolutely, thank you.
So again, you noted that this is open, it went out to parents tonight,
Yes,
and they have through Friday to respond.
through thought exchange, but it will also be posted to the website, and we'll also take traditional comments. If people want to email into me, I'm happy to receive comments through email as well. We do have a fairly strict timeline. Looking for Linda, final complete application by.
Final applications due in August, but the community input, I believe, must be done by June 26th.
So again,
Okay.
we're working on really tight timelines that are coming down from the federal level through the State Department of Education and then being pushed out through us. So we might like to go a little bit more slowly than this, but we're following those guidelines. We're not going to leave these dollars on the table. We're going to make sure we meet the deadlines.
And I think you said this in the meeting, but just to reiterate, as you noted, one of the requirements is to get this kind of input, which is a wonderful way to do it. There are a number of other requirements for this spending, so that as parents or others are looking at this, there are guidelines that we have to follow.
Yes, the federal government and then the state of Connecticut has established areas in which these dollars may be spent, and they may not be spent outside of those areas. And in fact, one of the identified areas, I know we're going to get questions on this, so it's worth speaking to now. One of the identified areas is ventilation at the school level. And so I know there are going to be questions, especially on the heels of such a difficult week last week, about are we spending any of these dollars towards ventilation specifically at Adams? The quick answer is no, and it's because our allocation is so small. We could spend all of the 1.1 million at Adams trying to bring up the ventilation system, and it wouldn't be enough to address the concerns, even at that one building. Now, again, if we were getting 120 million, there'd probably be some HVAC work going into this plan. $1 million just does not stretch that far. There is a separate grant, which is a competitive grant. It's not similar to this, that you can write for ventilate specific facility upgrades and ventilation grants. And Mr. Durham is researching the possibility of writing to a grant for Adams under that separate umbrella. We don't have specifics to report to you now, but the reason that that's not in this grant is simply because of the size of our grant and the costs of those projects. That being said, the board got a full overview of the HVAC projects occurring in all of our buildings around the district. And even though last week was a really difficult week, the board's been brought up to speed about all of the efforts that have gone in to upgrade HVAC in all 7 of the schools. And without reiterating all of that here, anybody who's interested, the operations meeting from earlier tonight is archived on YouTube. There was about a half-an-hour discussion that went building by building about where we stand with upgrades in all of those settings.
No questions? With this grant, is there kind of a post-grant accounting or report that we then provide back?
Yeah, there's follow-up reporting to the state about where the dollars were expended.
There's very specific reporting requirements. We have to provide certain detail on every expenditure that we make under this grant to the state. Haven't seen the full report yet, but I know there's going to be those kind of guidelines.
And important to note, we will now write, in addition to writing these applications for all of these different grants, we will now be responsible for the management, upkeep, administration, and reporting for CARES, ESSER, ESSER 2, and then ESSER 3, right? All enormously helpful, right? We needed those dollars, but right, we didn't add staffing to the business office, right? Yes.
So how does all that work into it? And I'm just an honest question because it seems like it's a huge Herculean task and you've been amazing this year doing it, but I just.
A lot of the work is being pushed through my office, through Jason's office, and primarily through Linda's office, and the 2 support positions working
We
with her.
have a very good team that works together to get this done. So we do what we have to do to get this done. And all.
There's been, the State Department is trying to be helpful. The State Department of Education is having constant webinars for superintendents, for business managers. There's a lot of collaboration happening across district. Linda's been working closely with CASBO and other business directors, and I've been doing a lot of work with other superintendents so that we're trying not to recreate the wheel 169 times, but to lean on each other as much as we can. Thank you for the question. It's just getting absorbed is the answer. In fact, Bill Tracy, if I may, if I could just, one additional item that's not under my agenda, but I did want to note it. Guilford's received a lot of press lately. We've received a lot of press coverage in the Guilford Courier around the equity and social justice work that we've been doing. And now we're seeing that coverage expand to the Middletown News and in this past week to the Hartford Current. I do just want to note that I really appreciate the conversation and the coverage that we're receiving in those areas. There's been a conversation that's been unfolding nationally, and Guilford seems to be in the center of it. And as we, as a board, as we have been talking and as the staff has been talking about equity and social justice, as we have been focusing on culturally responsive and sustaining instructional pedagogies, as we have been focusing on broadening the titles that we use in our classrooms, as we have looked at diversifying our workforce here in Guilford, and simply supporting our children and being able to have honest and candid conversations about race in our community. There have been other conversations and other suggestions, both at the national level, but also locally, that have suggested that what we are doing, rather than looking at instructional approaches and texts and the workforce, is that we are indoctrinating the children in Guilford Public Schools into a Marxist or an evil ideology. That we are teaching all white students in Guilford that they are racist, and that we are teaching all Black and brown students in Guilford that they are victims. I just want to say that is not what is happening in the Guilford Public Schools. The Guilford Public Schools have been engaging in a broad conversation here at the board level, hopefully with the community, and in our schools that have focused on our instructional approaches, our curricula, the assignments and the texts that we use within those curricula, in ways to help all of our students know that they are represented in the texts that we read, in the conversations that we have, and that we can talk about race without being racist. We have shared texts with the principals and the leaders in the staff and with teachers in the staff. And those texts have talked about race. They are provocative texts. They are challenging professional level texts that we've asked our staff to engage with. But I want to be clear to the community. There's no assignment in Guilford Public Schools. There has been no teacher training in Guilford Public Schools that has said all white people are racist. I reject the assumption that talking about race therefore makes us racist. And I just wanted to make sure that that statement is said clearly and briefly and on the record. The texts that we have shared with our staff often come up in the center of that. I want to be really clear that asking our staff members to think about being proactively anti-racist rather than passively not racist, right? It comes down to, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. I don't think that asking our adult teachers to wrestle with that idea can be equated with being racist. And so again, I just wanted to be able to say that, to clarify. If there are people that are concerned that we're doing the other, then let me dispel you of that notion. We are not doing the other. We are focused on our instructional approach that helps every child feel heard and present in the classroom. We want to diversify our texts that allow students to see themselves in the texts that we read, and that help our students to see the whole world and all of history. And we really want to make every effort to diversify our teacher workforce so that we're not just talking about people who are different, but that if we're really lucky, our students will have opportunities to work with and develop relationships with people who look a little different than them as well. And we're doing it from a good place, out of care for all of our students. When the word evil gets attached to that, I just want to take a moment and make that statement really clearly on the record. And I apologize for taking a few extra moments in my report to do that.
No apologies. I thank you for that clarification. And one of the things I guess I would certainly urge the community to do is that if you have questions about what's happening, please reach out to the administration, reach out to board members. I get concerned that a word of mouth approach means that sometimes people aren't getting accurate information about about what's happening in Guilford Public Schools. We heard from Dr. Seiler a couple weeks ago at our curriculum instructional assessment committee, who explained the approach to the curriculum audit, the approach to pedagogy, to the ways that teachers are thinking about their materials and considering them. So again, for people who have questions, please reach out to us so that we can provide information in an accurate and detailed way that allows you to get your questions.
And I would highly recommend the Hartford Currents article from this past weekend. They did a very good job, I believe, setting in context what I struggled to say here tonight. So please read the Hartford Current article.
Building on what you said, the focus of the most critical comments we've gotten has been the claim, I think, misinformed, if not purposely misrepresented, that we are teaching and intend to teach critical race theory. It's a misrepresentation of critical race theory anyway, which essentially has said for 30 years that institutional racism exists. And it came out of the study of law. They mentioned that because the books that were sent out to our staff, in part, rely on critical race theory as a frame of reference, legitimately. If we didn't have institutional racism, we'd be having a different conversation about this. What is misrepresented by the critics is that every single sentence they have read in those books, some of which we would not agree with at all and shouldn't, do not necessarily represent everything that we believe individually or as a system, because those authors are interpreting what they think ought to happen as opposed to what we may be doing. And so I think it's important for people to realize that there's a difference between us trying to teach people about diversity and being culturally responsive and caring about these things, and teaching something which has been labeled Marxist, communist, etc. In fact, these critics have also said clearly they do not believe that institutional racism exists. And that's not really up for debate by most people who understand the issues. So it seems to me that they're tarring and misrepresenting the school system, and they're making demands that are really incendiary.
And Dr. Hirsch, you make a good point. I don't think there's ever been a book that I've read where I've agreed with everything that's in the text. We have intentionally embraced provocative presenters. And one of my first years here, we invited Sugata Mitra to come and speak to the teachers. And his thesis was that in the age of technology and Google, teachers are unnecessary. Well, I didn't believe that. I did not agree with that position. But boy, I wanted him to challenge our teaching staff with that. I wanted him to put that on the table, and I wanted us as professional educators to have to wrestle with that idea. And the authors and some of the TED speakers that we have presented this year have been important because they present the idea in a way that is strongly worded and intentionally provocative. And we, as professionals, read those texts critically, just as our students read text critically in the classroom. We hold ourselves to the same standard.
By the way, I note that the critics who claim to have read these books don't seem to be persuaded by them. So that it's possible to read them and in fact reject ideas. Two, those books, as well as almost everything else we're reading nationally, suggest that one of the key ways of dealing with racism is education. And that our education system throughout our history has been inadequate to that task. And what this conversation has been about nationally is how does one do more justice to history, literature, music, art, etc., in ways that is not so narrow and does justice to various people. Seems to me that in that sense, what you and the staff have been doing is exactly what we should be doing.
Trying. Thank you. And that does conclude my report for the evening. Thank you for the extra minutes.
All right. Next item on the agenda, so we're now going to the board items because then we move here. The first is to act on personnel items. I'm seeing here a number of staff who've given a tremendous amount to our school community, so we're certainly gonna be sad to see them
Not
go.
my favorite item.
I know, absolutely not. So the first, I'd like a motion to ratify the resignation for the purpose of retirement of the following teachers. Tom Boats, Guilford High School, music, 20 years of service in Guilford. And Mark Diglio, Baldwin Middle School, grade 5, 25 years of service in Guilford. Is there a motion to ratify the resignation of these two teachers?
So moved.
Second? All right. Thank you to both of them
Okay,
for
great.
tremendous service to Guilford Public Schools. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, yes, you're ready. Please ratify the resignations of the following teachers. Susan Oakley, Adams Middle School, 18 years of service in Guilford. Instrumental music. Kimberly Gonzalez, Baldwin Middle School, grade 5, 3 years of service in Guilford. Is there a motion to ratify the resignation of these teachers?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Yes, he's down. Thank you. Thank you. Keep me honest, please. Yes, so first, motion and a second. Again, thank you to these two individuals for their service. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's everybody. Mrs. Sullivan was just prompting me for this next one as well. Please ratify the resignation of the following administrators. William Graham, Bill Graham, Cox Elementary School Principal, 7 years of service in Guilford. Again, very sad to see him go. Certainly very popular principal in our school
Is there an
system.
option to say?
No, there's.
Can we not ratify it?
I'm only gonna entertain the
I'm not
option.
sure what happens if we don't approve these. I don't know if anyone that's like holding onto their ankles as they go. So is there a motion to ratify the resignation of Gilbert?
I reluctantly.
We do have to do this. John.
So
Let it be noted that John did.
so moved.
So moved. A second, please. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, we should note that Mr. Grimm was also the principal at Calvin Lee.
That is exactly right.
Ah.
That's right.
Double school.
Dr.
Right.
Balistraci, if I may, I just wanted to personally thank Mr. Grimm. I was fortunate enough, I have 2 daughters who went through Calvin Lee. I was so lucky to have him as our principal. And I was also fortunate enough to be a PTO co-president during the time when Mr. Grimm was also there. I can say that he was a truly extraordinary principal, committed to the point where my daughter, who ran the Girls Coach Girls Run marathon or whatever, 5K, there was 3 kids from our school, and Mr. Grimm was at the finish line. It was probably 6 o'clock at night. So that's how committed he is. And I greatly thank him. We'll miss him.
I was gonna be very missed here.
Thank you, Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm.
I will also just like to note that Mr. Grimm was a regular attendee.
Yeah.
at our board meeting.
Yes.
We'll miss him at board
Which
meeting.
almost by itself deserves important recognition, for sure.
When Phil shared this news with his principal colleagues, more than one literally came out of their chairs. They were unable to stay seated when Bill shared the information. It's been an enormously important part of the team. He's been a mentor to new principals who have joined the team, and we in central office have moved on him. He's going to be very, very missed here in Guilford.
Right, I know we have a motion second, honestly, now I can't even remember.
You did not.
Okay, I don't think we did, and we have to do that. Okay, so we have a motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And then please ratify the appointment of the following teacher, Caitlin Lombardi, for the district technology integration instructional specialist, 17 years of, I'm sorry, I need to stop. I'm ratifying the appointment of, did I say
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is an appointment now.
It's so
This
exciting
is
now
good
to get
news.
to a place where people are coming in and I got
Now
rattled for a
shifting
second.
gears.
Please ratify the appointment of the following teacher, Caitlin Lombardi, District Technology Integration Instructional Specialist, 17 years of experience coming into the district. Is there a motion to ratify the appointment of this teacher?
So
Second, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then one more. We do have a non-renewal that we have to vote on. This is something that that happens sometimes when you literally do not have a position available anymore. And actually, Dr. Green, we're going to ask you to help to explain it a little better than I just have.
This is a situation where we have more teachers employed than we have positions available in a specific subject area next year. It is at times impacted by reducing numbers in an area. It can also be impacted by teachers on leaves who are returning. Mark is the least senior teacher on staff in this specific certification area. I want to make this clear. This is not related to performance. Mark served very well at the high school this year. We were very happy with his performance. We have written him a shining recommendation, but more importantly, he's placed on a recall list. And the board knows, and you've seen this just from the budget prep through exhibits like this one, things often happen. And so should there be movement within the department, should there be somebody who needs a leave or somebody who chooses to leave the district, Mark would be immediately recalled to service, given the opportunity to return to Guilford. Should he not land another job in another district, or should he prefer this one to that one? But he's on the recall list. He will come back immediately. He is in good standing with us. We hope to find an opportunity to return him to our high school.
Okay, so Mark Severino, Guilford High School World Language. Is there a motion to, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask Dr. Freeman for your help, non-renewal, to non-renew this
A
position?
motion to approve the non-renewal, yes.
Thank you. So, thank you, Kristen. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Yes. Next, on the agenda, we have to approve a $1,750 donation from Project Courage to Guilford High School. Is there a motion to approve that donation?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we certainly thank Project Courage for that donation. Also, to approve a $12 donation from Ashley's Ice Cream to Guilford High School. Is there a motion to approve that donation?
So, second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Everybody? Okay. Terrific. 9.4, this is a receive item. This is the 2019-2020 annual report. Dr. Freeman, did you want to say anything about it?
This is an annual requirement, and enormous thanks goes to Lori on and being able to pull this together this year. So we're required to deliver this to you annually at this time. It becomes part of the townwide report. Therefore, your reading doesn't require a lot of conversation, but again, great thanks to Lori on pulling it together.
Right. Now, reports on committees. Does the policy committee have a report for this evening?
Yes, our next meeting will be on June 28th.
Wonderful, thank you. Operations committee, we did meet just prior to this meeting, and then we covered the main points of discussion. The curriculum, instruction, and assessment committee.
Yes, thank you. We met on May 24th. We already alluded to some of the topics, but we were fortunate to have Dr. Seiler join us and discuss the work that he's been doing all year long in our district in terms of an audit that's been conducted and in terms of the meetings that have taken place between himself and student groups and individual students, has spent time discussing experiences of various student groups and specific students in the district. He let us know that he is formulating a report and that will be forthcoming, but he wanted to make sure that that was finalized and that teachers were given adequate time to give input on that report. So we're all, I think, waiting for that information. I think it will be very rich when we get it. We also, in the time remaining, were able to discuss some of our policies in the district around leveling of classes at the high school. And we specifically heard from the high school English department, actually, who has recommended that that the leveling for upcoming sophomores be sort of discontinued for English And we heard the justification and the information around that as well. Mhm.
Any liaisons to town meetings for which there's something to report?
Land acquisition did not meet this month.
All right. And last, liaison to our board of directors.
We did have our first in-person meeting on Thursday,
Okay.
which I was unable to attend. It was to discuss the annual budget.
Okay.
And then we don't meet over the summer, so I'll have some nice budget homework to do and we'll get back to it in September.
All right, so that concludes the reports of committee. The next item is an opportunity for the public. Public questions or comments at this time. Again, if anyone is interested in addressing the board, we just ask that you come up to the podium and state your name and address. And we're happy to entertain any public that wants to come forward. Sure, come on.
It's kind of a free for all.
I was just gonna say. yeah.
I'll be brief. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christine Latayette, 6 Pole Bridge Lane, for the record. Mother of 3 children in Guilford Public Schools. I am currently wrapping up my tenure as co-president of the Calvin League PTO. And lastly, a founding member of the ABAR committee, newly formed this past summer, which is the Anti-Bias, Anti-Racist Committee. I would like to share with the board and the public that all feedback that we've received regarding PTO-funded ABAR activities and the Equity and Social Justice Initiative has been very positive. We at Calvin League have not received any negative feedback or opposition from the Calvin League community. As a parent of 3 students in our schools, I personally have tremendous appreciation for the commitment of the board to augment our curriculum and school experiences with an infusion of diverse literature, points of view, testimony, and documented historical accounts that in the past have not been made available to students. I plan to continue to collaborate with school administrators, teachers, families, and students in all efforts related to equity and social justice in curriculum, extracurricular experiences and activities, and cultural enrichment programs. You have my full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to?
Transition quickly. Hi, everyone. Ornella Rulo. I'm 432 Old Whitfield Street here in Guilford. And thank you, Dr. Freeman, Dr. Balistraci, members of the Board of Ed for including my comments tonight. I'm here tonight in support of the Board of Ed Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee as they work with Dr. Seiler towards improved culturally responsive and sustaining pedagogy. After reviewing the BOE CIA committee meeting on 5/24 regarding progress on Dr. Seiler's audit, I applaud your continued transparency on this board and look forward to the forthcoming report. I'm here tonight as a parent of 3 Guilford Public School students and also as a founding member with Christine of the Guilford Anti-Bias, Anti-Racist Alliance. But what I would like to share with you tonight, I also stand here as a pediatrician. My current work does not include a clinical practice. However, I am no less committed to the health of all children than the first day I walked onto the wards at Los Angeles County Hospital when I began my medical training. Please understand I share my background tonight because I implore you not to take my statement lightly, as what I would like to state is not my personally formulated opinion, but that of the American Academy of Pediatrics. In August of 2019, the American Academy of Pediatrics published a policy statement entitled "The Impact of Racism on Child and Adolescent Health," which recognized that, and I quote, "Racism is a social determinant of health that has profound impact on the health status of children, adolescents, emerging adults, and their families. Pediatricians and other child health professionals must be prepared to discuss and counsel families of all races. I repeat, that's all races, on the effects of exposure to racism as victims, bystanders, and perpetrators. And as per our role in education, the American Academy of Pediatrics, quote again, advocates for federal and local policies that support implicit bias training in schools and robust training of educators in culturally competent classroom management, and advocates for curricula that are multicultural, multilingual, and reflective of the community. So I commend and thank Dr. Freeman, Dr. Balistraci, the members of the Guilford Board of Education for being leaders in the pursuit of social justice in our school system, for remaining committed to equity despite misinformation and propaganda, and for their continued work to improve curriculum and professional development for the betterment of all our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Jennifer Scoggin. I live at 325 Old Satcham's Head Road. I have a current 5th grader at Baldwin and soon to be 3rd grader next year at AW Cox. Like Ornella, I typically come to these events or interact with the community as a parent, but tonight I also want to interact as an educational researcher and staff developer in the area of literacy instruction. I've spent a tremendous amount of my professional career studying culturally responsive and sustainable pedagogy, and also thinking about education as an exercise in social imagination and how we can provide the opportunity for kids to imagine what ought to be and to pursue that vision of the world. And I do want to commend Dr. Freeman and his nested approach to all of this culturally responsive work at a variety of levels, and the board for the statement that you've made. As a member of the AVAR Alliance on the Advocacy Committee, you have our full support. We are in the process of planning all sorts of events to try to educate the public, to celebrate the things that are happening in our schools that are making a large difference, and to garner as much support as we can. But I would urge all of you also to imagine kind of a space of possibility in your own work, to be very proactive about our response, so that we're not always in a position where we're reacting to naysayers or reacting to negative feedback, where as a community and as a board, to be more proactive in correcting these misunderstandings and taking a really strong stance to be leaders in the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Parent, 58 Graves Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity for letting the public speak tonight. I'd like to express my support for the Board of Education statement on addressing equity and social justice in the Guilford Public Schools. I've also been so impressed with the audit being conducted at the high school by Dr. Seiler. This process demonstrates an incredible responsibility and commitment to ensuring an equitable and enriching educational experience for all students. I think a similar audit conducted by at the lower grades would also be very insightful as well. As a member of the Calvin Lee ABAR Committee, Anti-Bias, Anti-Racist, we have seen tremendous interest from elementary families across the district on how to have tough conversations about race and racism with their children. Our committee worked with Roots Connected, a professional development organization, who created a family workshop series for our community. ABAR committees from all 4 elementary schools, along with the financial support of all 4 PTOs, brought the first workshop talking about race and racism with my child to their school community. Over 150 families across 4 elementary schools registered and attended the workshop. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with concrete examples on how beneficial it was for their families. We look forward to providing more educational resources for families in the future. And thank you all so much for your commitment to our students, teachers, and staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren Dennehy. My address is 7 Hampton Court. Thank you, Dr. Freeman, and the entire Board of Education for your time tonight. and for the countless hours you spent thoughtfully holding our community through this intense and challenging school year. I wanted to take a minute, like many of my peers here tonight, to make a few comments about the district's stance regarding social justice and equity. Firstly, simply thank you. While many of us have commented that it's been a long time coming, I recognize the bravery and strength it's taken for you to intentionally move our community in this important direction. Secondly, I wanted to also acknowledge my gratitude for the partnerships developing in the community through the ABAR Alliance. It's been really heartening to be a part of an energized and inspired ABAR team at Guilford Lakes. The beginning work of our group has included simple gestures, such as a recent portrait party, in which we gathered children to draw self-portraits with access to multicultural crayons. This was an energizing afternoon and a reminder of how simple gestures to embrace difference and open conversations are so easy, so important, and urgent. Our kids at Lakes are grappling with how to treat one another respectfully around their areas of difference, including race, gender, and ability, to name a few. A reminder of how these efforts are urgently needed to combat the insidious nature of bullying. Finally, I wanted to make a larger comment regarding the firestorm surrounding these efforts, including the question if our kids can in fact cope with complex realities and feelings about race. I, like many, am concerned with the politicization of this discussion, and I'm really grateful for you, who can help us swim through these rough waters by calling upon the expertise afforded you in education and child development, not politics. As a clinician and clinical professor in child mental health and child development, I can attest it's a sign of developmental progress to learn to think critically, to build empathy, and to make efforts to look outside of oneself and develop an identity within a larger world. Shouldn't be surprising that mental health outcomes are better for people with these capabilities. As we know, the mental health experiences for children experiencing racism, sexism, gender discrimination, and more are poor. There are research and practice ways, as we know, to support teachers to work with children as they grapple with hard feelings that surface in discussions. And we know that in the hands of competent and supportive adults, the children can handle complex feelings and consider practical ways to solve community problems. I thank you all for your good work thus far and encourage you to continue holding our knowledge of children's needs front and center as you move these efforts forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Freund. I live at 337 Old Whitfield Street in Guilford. And I didn't write anything. I just want to say thank you, Dr. Freeman, Dr. Bounce Tracy, Board of Education, of your steadfast efforts in bringing about equity and social justice into our schools. And there's way more behind you than against you. And we thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Nico Reiner, and I'm 9 years old, and I go to Guilford Lakes Elementary School. So I want to talk to you about how I was homeschooled for half of the year, and then I went back for the other half, and at first I was really excited, but then I realized that there was judging of people and a few people being picked on. This made me feel uncomfortable, and I wanted to stop it. So I talked to our school social workers, and I tried to come up with a solution.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Christine. Sorry, I live at 429 South Hoop Pole Road, and that was my son, Nico Leonard. I just wanted to briefly follow up on Nico's comments that we're very grateful to have support in the elementary schools. And I wanted to share that as a parent, I decided to join ABAR based on Nico's experiences. And I feel that there were some additional stories, not to get into the nitty gritty of it, but there was clearly a lack of understanding at the student level about the word racist, thinking that it was a joke. And all of these things, students realize there's a power and a mystique around this word, at least at the elementary school level. And I realized that it's important for us to work as a community, both parents, teachers, administration, all together in helping our community to heal and address these issues out in the open. I'm very pleased to hear about the upcoming grant and the work that is already taking place. And I'm very excited about this partnership between the ABAR Alliance and the school district. I do have some concerns that perhaps the school board may consider ABAR to be taking on this work in a way that might insulate the school from some very difficult conversations. For example, we recently had an idea that we would give out multicultural crayons for free as an introduction to the Guilford Lakes community of introducing the work that ABAR is doing, and that was not allowed because it would be a difficult conversation that some parents may not agree with, bringing the issue of race so concretely into the student body directly. And so I do understand that it's a very challenging and difficult conversation, and it's my hope that we can, moving forward, work together to have those very challenging conversations, because I think it's very needed. And I'm very excited to begin this challenging work together as a community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tanya Beauvais. I live at 474 Briarwood Drive. And I stand to also say thank you very much for all of your hard work. It's been a difficult year. I think talking about race, talking about equity is something that is difficult and challenging, but the conversations do get better. They do get easier as we talk about it more. I'm so happy to see that the school is taking on this work. I really applaud your efforts, as well as the statement that was issued. When I think about, there's the famous saying, so be the change that you wish to see in the world. And I really applaud you, because I think that you are trying to be the change that we wish to see in the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There, Alexa Miller, 201 Dromara Road. I'll be really brief. I just want to reinforce all of the gratitude that's been expressed tonight and tell you how much I appreciate the work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. When I moved to Guilford 8 years ago from the Boston area, I was really taken aback and frankly quite horrified at some of the things that are normal in this town and accepted. And what the efforts that I've seen come out of this school, I felt very disappointed by, I didn't realize it's gonna get so emotional, many aspects of the town. And the efforts coming out of the school over the last 18 months, for me, have given like the first time I've felt a sense of pride to live in Guilford. And so I just want to say thank you. Like others who've spoken, I come from a healthcare background, and I'm just so viscerally aware of the impact of micro acts of discrimination, as well as very big ones on human health. And of course, that's racial, and it's also, disability and sexuality and so many things. And it's incredible to see you taking this head on. And I also I hope that and my assumption is that you do, but the pushback is a sign of the progress and the awakening, and also a generation of people who maybe can't imagine how to love themselves while being honest about our past and the economic basis of the idea of prosperity and success. and how exciting it is to have the opportunity to create a generation of students who can and who can work together really globally across a lot of difference. I teach a class at Brandeis University, and I just am coming off the heels of last semester where 15 of a group of 15 students in my class, less than a third of them were white. It was the most multiracial class I've ever taught. And it was also the best experience I've ever had. The learning was so profound. It was truly high performing by nature of the diversity. And so I'm just really excited and grateful for all you're doing. And I just also finally wanted to put in a request that I do hear talk sometimes about like, oh, the hard conversations, we're ready for that in high school. And like, it's never too young, to be really honest, and take on the work of retelling our story and being really authentic so that we can all work together. So I do want to put in a request to take that on as well at the lower grades. But thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Diane Grasso, 351 County Road. Although my kids have moved through the entire Guilford school system, are in college now, I'm excited for the upcoming students of Guilford that they will be able to reap the benefits of the social equity curriculum. And I appreciate your courage and initiative in undertaking this change at such a difficult time. So thank you to the Board of Ed, Dr. Freeman and Dr. Belstreet. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, Sewell Golden, 645 Tanner Marsh Road. I also didn't write anything down, but thank you so much for all your hard work. I just wanted to tell a quick story. My daughter and I, my daughter's 7, we were talking about Thanksgiving this year. And I explained to her that white settlers have been here for 400 years, but Native Americans were here for millions of years. And she was like, oh, Mom, that's not that long. Whereas when I grew up, it seems like ages. So, sorry, I hate public speaking. But I think the reframing of history is so important, and it's effective. And I would love to see diverse voices in our curriculum and in our teaching staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whether people are getting up. Thank you. Again, thank you all for coming and for providing public input. It's always very helpful for those of us on the Board of Education to hear from the public and hear how people are feeling. And so we very much appreciate you coming out. Nico, very much appreciate you too. And I have to tell you, I don't know how you felt speaking, but you just heard a grown-up say it's kind of nervous to speak in public, and it's taken me a long time to feel comfortable. So thank you for having the courage to do that. I appreciate it. All right, that is the conclusion of our Board of Ed meeting tonight. We do have one more piece of business for the board, which is an executive session, superintendent's evaluation, which happens every year. That is something, again, that happens in executive session. And when you come out of the executive session, we will adjourn, but there will be no votes happening. So for all intents and purposes, that will be the end of the public part of the meeting. I am going to ask for a Board of Ed member to make a motion to go into executive session. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you very much.